Hi everyone, it's William. So this is the first time you're seeing me inside the house. I have not yet done the painting that I intend to do to make my sort of dedicated video space in another room of the house, but I thought this was pleasant enough, although somehow the camera is kind of sloping the wall behind me in the picture, so it's a bit discombobulating. Even for me looking at the image, it's a little strange. And this very square door makes me think of a story I was told about Prince Felix Yusupov by some people who knew him many years ago in London when I was a student. And apparently he hated square or rectangular doorways. He insisted that the doorways in his own domiciles were arched. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think I would like that better too. But, you know, it is what it is. So I have a couple of other things that I think are interesting as I've been moving things around to get ready for the painting, and I've come across some things that I've sort of forgotten about. So these are diaries, pre-revolutionary diaries of Grand Duke Pavel Alexandrovich, Dmitri's father, and I've never been able to read through them. The handwriting, yeah, I need to spend more time on it, because when I was trying to read the handwriting of Grand Duke Georgy Mikhailovich at the request of his grandson, David Chavchavadze, it took me a long time. It took me almost a year just looking at them, just making myself look at them every day. And so finally something clicked. And so I think that I'll have to do the same thing with these, and I haven't, but you can see they're very well. I guess I haven't shown you a sample of Dmitri's handwriting, but they're like the polar opposite of his. His is more angular and it slants to the left, and Paul's is sort of, it even slants a little more to the right than I would say the average. But anyway, maybe we'll be able to go through those at some point if I can actually. And this is another thing that I found and thought, I've never done anything with this. These are various newspaper clippings, postcards, various things. There's the Empress Alexandra that were given to me by a very kind gentleman in Switzerland, in Davos, Switzerland, and I never met him. But as he was going through old things that he owned and downsizing and looking for places to place various things, he found what he had done as a child, and I think also as a young man. I think he'd lived in Wiesbaden. I don't know. It could even have been Königsberg. I don't know why I have those two cities in mind, but he had heard about my interest in Grand Duke Dmitri and thinking that I was probably interested in the Romanovs in general, as I am. There are 2 folders full of these, and you know, they're not valuable things. They're not signed or anything like that, but they certainly are a monument to this man's devotion. And so I'm very happy to have them. I hopefully am giving them the kind of home that he hoped they would have. So this is, of course, the 1921 diary series. We finished up with 1907, alas, because I already missed those. But now we have Dmitri at the age of 29 in post-revolutionary exile. And if you recall from the last 1921 diary entry we did, and it's been a while, it's been like, 3 weeks. He had made a trip from Paris to Copenhagen. He was invited by his surrogate parents who had taken him in when he was a refugee in Iran in 1917. In Persia, they had taken him in, and so he was going to visit them in their new posting, which was Copenhagen, and stay there with them at the English mission. Sir Charles was a diplomat. And I think, yeah, was he ambassador or just minister? I don't know. I should look that up. But anyway, Dmitri had a complicated relationship with Sir Charles's wife, Lady Lucia. And he was, kind of dreading going to Denmark and putting it off as long as he could, because he didn't know how she was going to, what attitude she was going to take toward him, and if she was going to try to sort of resume the relationship that they had before. It never was, I don't think it ever was an affair in the sense of them having sex, but Dmitri definitely describes that they made out, that they did some heavy kissing, and that they didn't go beyond that, is what he claimed. But anyway, that was a rather fraught situation. So this is his first full day in Copenhagen. And another important thing to point out is that he'd gone from Hamburg to a place called Warnemünde, and in Warnemünde there had been very strict customs procedure that you had to go through. He said you practically had to get undressed. They didn't want anyone, the German authorities there didn't want anyone taking currency out of the country. And, there's always this in the background with Dmitri, that some people thought, whether rightly or wrongly, that he was engaged in some kind of intelligence activity, possibly so. And so maybe it wasn't an accident that his luggage got left behind, but at any rate, he ended up in Copenhagen late at night with no clothes, not even, he said, a change of underwear. And yet he needed to hit the ground running, so to speak, the next day, because there were already social occasions lined up for him. Okay, so just bear that in mind, because one of the most extraordinary events that I know of, possibly the thing that surprised me the most of anything in Dmitri's diaries, and there were lots of surprises, is this occasion that was a result of him not having his luggage. Okay, so this is the 5th of February on the old Julian calendar, the 23rd of February on the Western calendar, which was in use in Denmark. It's 1921, it's a Saturday, it's Copenhagen, and Dmitri is staying at the English mission with the Marlings. All right, I slept ideally. There was an open breakfast at 10 o'clock, and Prince Potocki came to see me around 11:30. I can't say I particularly like him. Apparently he's frightfully cunning and extremely blank. After he left, I went for a walk with Lucia. She seems to me in general to be much calmer, and so far hasn't asked me any immodest questions. I lunched at home and afterwards did some writing. Around 4 o'clock, I went to see Ksenia. Empress Maria Fyodorovna had very kindly invited me to come at 5 o'clock, but I stopped by to see her, Ksenia, first in order to talk about Sokolov. I had tea at Maria Fyodorovna's. She has undoubtedly changed from what she looked like in London. She's gotten thin and blank, but her spirit was surprisingly unbowed. Naturally, we talked only about the weather. Axel came, and Marguerite, the daughter of the Swede Ingeborg. They're wonderful, but very young. I dined with the Marlings at Greuze. He's the American ambassador, and there was a frightful scandal because it turned out that I didn't even have a dinner jacket, and after a long conversation, I had to, with the permission of the host, dress in black pajamas. Fortunately, around 9 o'clock, I was informed that my things had arrived, so I went home, changed, and returned. After the dinner, there was a ball. Naturally, I didn't dance. It was at that dinner that I met Marie-Louise Moltke. Naturally, I sat with her for a very long time, and that strange and unexpected thing that I wrote about on page 113 happened almost instantly. We got home around 3 a.m. So the strange and unexpected thing that happened was that he kind of fell for Marie-Louise Moltke. He never claims to have loved her, but he liked her, and he thought she would make a good wife. So, and she was sort of quasi-royal, I guess. Her mother was a Bonaparte, but we'll come back to that. So, yeah, so far so good. Lucia is behaving herself. Dmitri slept very well. Prince Potocki came to see him. If you recall, Prince Potocki had also met him at the train station in Copenhagen along with the Marlings, and Prince Potocki was the military attaché attached to the Russian embassy in Copenhagen. And at this time, even though it's 1921 and the revolution and the Bolshevik takeover is a settled thing, there was still a Russian embassy or mission in Copenhagen that was staffed by the people who had been there before the revolution. So that's sort of an interesting thing. But at any rate, so Dmitri goes around 4 o'clock to see Ksenia, Grand Duchess Ksenia Alexandrovna. And he's been invited to come probably for tea with the Dowager Empress, Maria Fyodorovna, at 5 o'clock, but he wants to see Ksenia first because he wants to talk to her about the Sokolov investigation, and he wants very much to be put in charge of that himself. The investigation was complete, but he wanted to be put in charge of all the investigatory reports and material and all of that. Dmitri wanted to be put in charge of that. We've talked about that several times in the past in the 1921 series. It was very important to him, and he was very frustrated that it wasn't working out. Initially, he had seemed to have Ksenia's support, but then when he went to London from Paris specifically to see her and to get her support, but no sooner had he gotten back to Paris than he got news from her that she was not going to support him. So apparently someone else got to her in the meantime, got to her, so to speak, and changed her mind. All right, so he doesn't really say what the conversation was like with Ksenia, but I guess you know that Ksenia undoubtedly told him, do not talk about this with my mother, because she just can't take it. So she never acknowledged the fact that that her son and her daughter-in-law and her grandchildren, well, both of her sons had been killed by the Bolsheviks. She refused to accept that. And so, you know, Dmitri just was not going to be able to talk to her about that. And he honored that. So they just, as he says, they just talked about the weather. And in one of his early diary entries, he even more emphatically talked about how bad she looked to him, how much she had changed because she'd gotten so thin and she looked very infirm. And at that time, he had written, I just don't think she's going to live very much longer. He referred to some heart attacks that she had had, apparently, and he didn't think she would be alive too much longer. In fact, I think she ended up living till 1928 or thereabouts, so several years. But anyway, the interesting thing about this is that two members of the Danish royal family turned up, or rather one turned up with his wife. So this is Axel with his wife Marguerite, and Dmitri says that Marguerite is the daughter of the Swede Ingeborg. So I didn't look that up, but I guess Ingeborg must have been a prince of the Swedish royal family, and Marguerite was his daughter. Axel was, I believe, you remember Dmitri's friend Olga, Prince Olga, and his wife Meta, and we'll be hearing more about them because he and Dmitri were real friends, and Axel apparently not. And it's funny that he refers to Axel as being very young. So he clearly likes Axel. He says they're wonderful. He just, for whatever reason, hasn't gotten a chance to know him like he knew Olga, I think. I don't know. Aage. But it's so funny that he says they're very young because Axel was older than him. I think Axel was 3 years older than him, so they're close in age. But this is kind of, Dmitri was kind of an old soul, and so he did this with people. It's interesting that he perceived them as being younger than him, even as in this instance when they were sometimes older. So, yeah, go figure. Then there's this Gru. I may already have some information about him that I stupidly didn't look up before I started this. So Gru, Grew, he is the American ambassador or the American minister. I don't know. Dmitri uses a word that doesn't necessarily mean ambassador. It can be ambassador, but it can also be translated just as envoy or, a high diplomatic rank. So, again, every time Americans want to have a look at Dmitri, I suspect that they had a little interest in him as a possible future ruler of Russia, and possibly even intelligence asset. I don't know. But anyway, off they go to the American embassy or mission. And here, as I'm sure you already realize, is the thing that just really made me laugh, and I was really surprised when I first came across it, the frightful scandal that Dmitri refers to. So of course, that he did not wear black pajamas when he went to see the Dowager Empress. And he wore, most likely, the clothes that he had been wearing on the train. And that was okay because it was an informal occasion, a family occasion, and it was the afternoon. But now it's evening. Now he's been invited to both a dinner and a ball at the American embassy, and it just will not do to show up in his daytime clothing. And so, for you and I think we would find it much less embarrassing to say, go to a black tie New Year's Eve party in a regular suit and just explain what happened, that our luggage was lost. But, apparently Dmitri's feeling was over my dead body. So he had a conversation with the host, and he was given permission to wear black pajamas. And apparently he would have worn the black pajamas to the ball as well if he hadn't suddenly got the notification that his luggage had been recovered. And apparently the two embassies were quite close, so he was able to go back and get changed. But I wonder what kind of shoes he was wearing. Shoes are going to look horrible with black pajamas unless, so was he wearing some kind of slippers? I don't know, and lest you think I've mistranslated, he himself uses the word pajamas, and that raises another intriguing question, which is why he had black pajamas. That would seem rather unusual. I don't know. What do we say about black pajamas? Okay, so then the next big event in this diary entry, which is just jam-packed with interesting things, is that it is at this ball that he meets Marie-Louise. And in fact, he writes Marie Louise, and then it looks like he's written a W and crossed it out. So we're left with Marie Louise Moltke. She was Marie Louise von Moltke, but Dmitri kind of didn't seem to get the whole von thing as yet. So, you know, now we get a picture of him as being rather like Mr. Darcy at the balls that he went to in wherever it was that the people lived in the in Pride and Prejudice. So he, no, not Mr. Darcy. Well, he's not dancing. So in that respect, like Mr. Darcy, but more like Mr. Bingley in the respect that he's very clearly interested in one woman. And boy, I hope he talks about how Lucia reacts to this. I'm dying to hear about that. I'm sure that didn't please her. But yeah, so this is the first of more than one dinner party and ball where he will ignore the other ladies and give his full attention to Marie Louise. Yeah, I hope you'll come back for those. It's nice to be doing this and not shivering at the same time. And at some point I'll be in my new space to do that. And meanwhile, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.